Genesis 28 through 31 deal with the beginnings of the nation of Israel. So you've got really a huge turning point in these 3 or 4 chapters when we talk about the life of Jacob and the sons of Jacob from his 4 females. He has 2 wives and 2 concubines that are responsible for bringing forth those 12 sons and 1 daughter that we know of from Scripture. Look back first at Genesis 27 and we'll talk about the beginnings of that. It's kind of interesting when you look at the Old Testament that the children of Israel are not the children of Abraham. Now, in the New Testament, they talk about themselves as the children of Abraham. But you don't have a nation of Abraham in the Middle East, right? It's Israel. They are known by that name because of Abraham's grandson, who becomes the center point, and his children become the center point. Abraham's other son, besides Isaac, Ishmael, you trace their lineage down and you end up with the Islamic people of the Middle East. So that clash that is there has been there for thousands of years and will continue to be there. When people ask me what I want for my birthday every year, I tell them I want peace in the Middle East. I think it would be a wonderful thing to see, but that constant turmoil has been there for a long, long time and is not easily overcome. So here are some terms that you're familiar with. Abraham, the father of the faithful. And again, in the New Testament, some of the Israelites call themselves the children of Abraham. You have the term Jew, which is derived from Judea, which is where they originated. The capital at Jerusalem is in Judea. Hebrew, which is basically the language group more than the people, but Hebrew has to do with their return from Egypt. The word Habiru means those people that came from across the river. So it's a name that got attached to them and to their language because they came across the Jordan River and conquered all of that area. And then you've got the Semites, right? Where does Semite come from? Anytime you hear people talking about, don't talk bad about the Jews, they call it anti-Semitism, right? Where does the word Semite come from? It's actually derived from Shem, one of the sons of Noah. So they're not just Semites, they're Shemites, and it comes down through Shem's lineage, down through Abraham, all the way to Jacob, who will eventually be known as Israel, and his 12 sons become the 12 tribes of Israel. And so again, from the end of 27 all the way through 31, you have this epic of Jacob and his 4 women and how the 12 tribes of Israel originated. So look at 27:41, and we're going to read all the way down to 28:5, and then notice how things began. Okay, Genesis 27:41. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." When Rebekah was told what her older son Esau had said, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, "Your brother Esau is planning to avenge himself by killing you. Now then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. When your brother is no longer angry with you and forgets what you did to him, I'll send word for you to come back from there. Why should I lose both of you in one day?" Then Rebekah said to Isaac, "I'm disgusted with living because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among the women of this land, from Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living." So Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him. He commanded him, "Do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Padan Aram, to the house of your mother's father, Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessings given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner, the land God gave to Abraham. Then Isaac sent Jacob on his way, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, son of Bethuel the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, who was the mother of Jacob and Esau. So we have to jump back and remember the things that had happened previously. You've got Jacob, who at birth was named the usurper, the one who grabs hold of things. And as he grew up, he took things from his older brother, who should have had the birthright, should have been honored as the firstborn. Why did those things happen? Remind ourselves of that in particular. God said so. Right? He was chosen before he was born. God said there are two nations within your womb. The older will serve the younger. And so Jacob had always been given that right by God. But as he grows up, he takes things from his brother Esau in odd ways. You remember that Esau was famished. He came in from hunting, and Jacob had made a bowl of red beans. And he said, I'm going to die if I don't eat something. Jacob said, okay, sell me your birthright. In other words, sell me your share of the family fortune for this bowl of beans. Esau thought he was going to die of hunger, and so he sold out. He bought the bowl of beans with his birthright. Later on, with Rebekah's help, Jacob fooled Isaac into giving him the family blessing. You remember him getting that meat prepared just the way that Esau would have prepared it. He put goat skin on his arms to fool Isaac because Isaac was old and couldn't see well. Now, by the way, we'll look at this again in a minute, but Isaac lives a long time. It seems in these passages that Isaac is almost gone, but Isaac hangs on for a little bit longer. But anyway, he fools his father into giving him the family blessing. So now he's got everything. He's got the blessing of the eldest. He's got the inheritance of the eldest. And his brother is not going to have it. Now, Esau does not want to kill his brother until his father dies. I'm going to wait, and when my father dies, then I'll mourn my father and kill my brother. That's his game plan for the next few years. That's what he wants to do. And as soon as Rebekah finds out about it, she comes up with a way to help Jacob get out on top, as she always does. She was very partial to him, as Isaac was very partial to Esau. So she goes to Isaac and complains about the women that the elder brother has married. Esau married in the area, which kind of tells you immediately that he can't be the one that's going to carry the promise, because you don't marry Canaanite women and carry the promise. That we've already seen. Abraham married Sarah, and then they wouldn't let Isaac marry anybody local. Isaac had to go and get Rebekah, or send a servant to go get Rebekah. And now the next generation that has the blessing is also going to go back and marry a family member. And I wrote all this down because I was trying to figure out who was related to whom. And if you'll give me just a minute or two, I'm going to run through this. I sent a copy on Facebook maybe a month ago, while I was trying to get my mind wrapped back around this in case we finally got back on Sunday nights. So here's kind of the family tree. Okay, you've got Abraham, Nahor, and Haran, three brothers. Haran dies early, and they name the place Haran. Right? So they go back and forth sometimes to Haran. That leaves Abraham and Nahor. Abraham marries his half-sister Sarah, and they adopt Lot, their nephew, who is the son of the dead brother Haran. Very late in life, they actually have a child of their own named Isaac. Nahor, the other living brother, marries Lot's sister, Milcah, which would be his niece, and has 8 sons by her, which would mean that they were both Lot's cousins and Lot's nephews. Nahor and Milcah also have a son named Bethuel, who then has a daughter named Rebekah, who is eventually to become the wife of Isaac, who is her second cousin. Bethuel also has a son named Laban, who in turn will produce two daughters, Leah and Rachel, that we'll meet shortly. And they become the wives of Isaac's son, Jacob. So I tried to figure out through all of that, how are Jacob and Rachel and Leah connected? They're first cousins on their mother's side, and I think something like third cousins on their daddy's side. That's about as close as I could get. So we've got a mishmash, yes? What's the purpose of going to Padan Aram? What's the real purpose? So Esau doesn't kill Jacob. What's the reason that she gives her husband? We don't want him to marry a Canaanite woman. If he marries a Hittite, I'm going to lose it. I don't want to be around her. I don't want to deal with a Hittite woman in the house. He's my son. He's the one that I care about, and you need to send him back to the family to get a wife from there. And so instead of Esau taking vengeance on his brother, then he takes off to Padan Aram, where his mother came from. Now, again, over the next 3 or 4 chapters, what we're going to see is that Laban is more of a trickster, more of a user than maybe even Jacob is. And so Jacob and Laban spend the next 20 years going back and forth as to who's going to come out on top. Since Laban is just the father of Leah and Rachel and not part of God's master plan, he's not under the blessing that God gave to Abraham, which came to Isaac, which is now given to Jacob. You figure who's going to win. Jacob's going to come out on top, and eventually he really does. But he is there for about 21 years. When you go past these chapters and get to Jacob's return to home, sure enough, Esau welcomes him back, and then together they bury their father. So Isaac, who seems like he's almost gone in these last couple of chapters that we covered, lives another 21 years in his declining years. When Jacob leaves, he's probably in his 150s, and he dies at 180. So who knows, how old is old when you live to be 180. So when you're 150, you're no spring chicken, but you've still got 30 years to go. And when Jacob left, his father was still alive, but Esau was looking forward to the day that he was finished mourning his father so that he could kill his brother. All right, let's keep going. Look down at verse 10. Let's just start in verse 10. Oh, no, one other thing. When Esau figures out that Isaac and Rebekah don't like him marrying the Hittite women, he went to Ishmael. Ishmael would be his uncle, right? Abraham's union with, lost her name. Abraham, Sarah, Sarah's handmaid. And when he got blessed by God, he had 12 sons. He has lots of kids and grandkids by this time. And so Esau gets a wife from Ishmael. So we have an intermarriage in that part of the family as well, which kind of brings them back together. All right. So in Genesis 28, beginning in verse 10, Jacob leaves Beersheba and sets out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate to heaven." Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone that he had placed under his head, and he set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called that place Bethel, which in Hebrew means the house of God, though the city used to be called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth." So we skipped over Isaac's generation with the tenth giving. But Abraham gave a tenth to Melchizedek. And now Jacob has promised that he would return a tenth to the Lord. I'm not sure exactly how that would be accomplished, what he assumed he would do to give a tenth to the Lord. But he makes that promise, "If you'll be with me." Now notice, God does not give a condition. God says, "I've chosen you, I'm blessing you, I'll be with you till all of this takes place." Jacob brings the condition. "If you'll be with me, and if you'll take care of me, and if you'll feed me and clothe me and make sure I'm okay, then when I come back this way, I'll see this pillar and it will remind me of my promise. And then I will give a tenth back to the Lord." Now, I want us to look at the progression of this promise and then note that this is where the promise stops. Okay? This is the promise that God started with Abraham back over in chapter 12. Run back over there. Genesis 12, verse 1. We'll look at Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, from your people, from your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse. And all the people on earth will be blessed through you." All right, go back over to 26. Abraham gets a lot of coverage. Isaac gets very little. Right? After all the time we spent with Abraham, Isaac only gets just a few chapters before we get to Jacob. Jacob only gets a few before we get to Joseph, and then Joseph has quite a few chapters. Chapter 26, beginning in verse 1. There was a famine in the land, besides the previous famine in Abraham's time. Isaac went to Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, in Gerar. And the Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands, and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. I will give them all these lands, and through your offspring all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Because Abraham obeyed me and did everything that I required of him, keeping my commands, my decrees, and my instructions." So Isaac stayed in Gerar. So you've got the first one, God tells Abraham, go to the promised land. To Isaac he says, stay in the promised land. Now to Jacob he's saying, make sure that you come back to the promised land. So it's all still very Canaan-centered. Look in Jacob's promise again in 28. Very, very similar in the wording. "I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and all people on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done everything that I have promised you." So you've got Abraham, I'm taking you to Canaan. Isaac, I don't want you to leave Canaan. Jacob, I want you to make sure that you come back to Canaan. When they end up in Egypt, the grand finale when Moses shows up is, we've got to get back. So there's always that Canaan-centered promise. God wanted them to be where they are, doing what they're doing. And so if one of them, like Jacob, leaves, then it's very important that they come back. Now again, you don't see this again. You get Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When Moses is on the mountain and he says, if you want me to go get these people, I've got to tell them who sent me. Whom shall I say has sent me? And God says, tell them that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has sent you. Tell them I am sent you. So you've got the one who was around in the time of Abraham, who made promises to Abraham, who was around in the time of Isaac, made promises to Isaac, was around in the time of Jacob, made promises to Jacob, and still is, right? So I've always been, I will always be, and because of that, the promises remain intact. The things I told Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I'm getting ready to fulfill in your generation when he brought them up out of Egypt. But all of this points to something that we looked at this morning. Right? When we talked about Jesus and his fulfilling of the law. Right? This is God telling Abraham, telling Isaac, telling Jacob, through your seed, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. So at some point, we have to get to that seed. And as Jesus was preaching the Sermon on the Mount, he's saying, you've heard it said, but I say, there's something different, there's something more, there's something more important. I didn't come to destroy the law, I came to fulfill the law. And not just the law, but every prophecy that had been made about Messiah for all those years, all the promises that God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to the nation of Israel, all came together in the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. So again, Jacob's the last one who's going to get this full-blown promise, but that promise is going to follow down through the Israelite chain until Jesus comes to fulfill it.